Like an edgy teen identifying as an attack helicopter, the Brisbane Metro is really just a bi-articulated bus cosplaying as a high-capacity metro. But hey, it's got some cool quality of life features. Faster boarding? Check. Information screens? Groundbreaking. The Brisbane Metro officially opened in early 2025, though there's one key piece of infrastructure that's fashionably late, and we'll get to that. The Metro runs on existing busways stretching from 8 Mile Plains in the south, heading north through the city to Kedron, with a small east-west connection from University of Queensland to Langlands Park. The big idea? Forget timetables. The frequency is so high you just turn up and go. No checking schedules, no stress, just vibes.
I am riding on the bus.
The Brisbane Metro has been in the works for nearly a decade, and alongside the shiny new rolling stock, the project includes some solid infrastructure upgrades. Victoria Bridge, now bus and cycle only. Cars? Yeet it. But wait, there's more. One key project that I mentioned is still underway is the new bus tunnel under Adelaide Street. The reason it was made is it's designed to bypass the overstuffed Queen Street bus tunnel, which, let's be real, was never built to handle the ridiculous number of buses cramming through it daily. So is the Brisbane Metro a game changer or just a really long fancy bus? Well, whatever you call it, at least it actually works. And in the world of public transport, that's already a win. So what exactly is a metro, and why does the Brisbane one differ? Well, there is no real definition of a metro, but the concept generally means uninterrupted high-frequency and high-capacity railway systems due to trains' ability to be very long to provide the capacity of each unit to move many people. Unlike a generally restricted in length bi-articulated bus. Maybe an Australian road train could compete, but that won't bode well for the tight turns inner city buses need to make. It's fundamentally a high-capacity public transit system, supporting up to 170 people per bus, or just under 2,000 people per hour with a frequency of every 5 to 7 minutes. A rather underwhelming figure compared to the roughly 30,000 per hour of the Central Tube line in London alone. Yes, Brisbane isn't as huge and as populous as London, but there are certainly capacity constraints on many existing public transit lines in Brisbane. The Brisbane Metro, on the other hand, simply identifies as a metro when in fact it is just a BRT system. So what made Brisbane come up with the metro idea? There are basically two reasons. Ever heard of the term flogging a dead horse? For those who don't know, it basically means to partake in a futile exercise trying to make something that's completely dead and useless work. It's a similar case here, but instead of a dead horse, it's an award-winning alive racehorse being made to run consecutive races to win that moolah and being whipped and flogged relentlessly until it's pretty much dead and useless. Australians have a policy tendency to create amazing pieces of infrastructure that work really well in their use cases. In Brisbane, for example, it's the busways stretching from 8 Mile Plains in the south up to Kedron in the north. This allowed buses from the south to zoom straight into the city, practically creating a BRT system that transports thousands of people into the city every day. This is where the flogging a racehorse analogy comes into play. The busways were so good, the council kept adding in new bus routes or increasing their frequencies along this busway into the city ad nauseam, which means until you fucking spew. So come the time around the 2010s, there were so many buses on this 2-lane corridor that you started getting traffic jams of buses themselves. This is what happened. The Victoria Bridge was full of buses all trying to pick up passengers at the cultural centre or go into the city. As the busways had to cross general traffic intersections, the through capacity couldn't handle the amount of buses on the line, and thus created a traffic jam of purely buses. This is the Victoria Bridge in the middle of the city that connects the cultural centre and the main city. And you can see it's just full of buses all trying to get through the cultural centre bus stop to pick up passengers. This doesn't bode well for the incessant demands from the council that people take public transport to fix the traffic. Something needed to be done to fix the traffic of buses, otherwise people would just be getting back in their cars to sit in the traffic if you're going to be sitting in the traffic of buses anyway. Oh, and yeah, the second reason the metro was created. Brisbane has some of the most congested roads in the country that the council had to do some grandiose bullshit to show that they were at least trying to do something to fight car dependency of a sprawling city. And of course, the default option was build a metro, a Temu metro. The congestion of the busways and the roads became a hot topic for the 2016 Brisbane City Council elections, with the opposition party Labor striking first by announcing plans to bring back the Brisbane trams. An amazing time at Brisbane, with an extensive tram network across the city that was unfortunately ripped out in favour of cheaper diesel buses. ironically, by the Labor mayor in 1969, Clem Jones. There's a joke that Brisbane's first ever road tunnel, the Clem 7, was named after him because thanks to Clem Jones ripping out the trams, we needed to build the tunnel. Anyway, after Labor announced a plan to bring back the trams, the LNP mayoral candidate Graham Jerk countered by doing one better, a partially underground metro system with one tunnel through the city and one under the Cultural Centre bus station. With the metro, Brisbane will truly become a global city like Paris, London, New York, and with a population of 140,000 people, Lausanne, Switzerland. Now, trams are expensive, but holy shit, metros are on another level cost-wise. Anyone with elementary level maths and 3 days on construction site experience could calculate on the back of a napkin it'll be a cost blowout fuck up, which is quite a typical thing of Australian infrastructure. Quirk knew this, so he took a leaf out of Clem Jones's book and a few more out of the classic conservative transport policy book. We just have to make rail cheaper. Well, how do we do that? Well, you see, most of the cost of rail comes from them having steel wheels instead of rubber. So, out with the steel wheels and in with the rubber wheels. Then they can go wherever they want. But it'll still be guided, like a metro. So, like a translaw system, right? No. Those things have overhead power lines. Overhead power lines cost too much. We'll have to put them on the ground for the metro to be powered. Right, so what Quirk essentially proposed was a half-assed tunnel system with a slot car style bus on top of it. All for the meager price of 1.15 billion. That's a bold estimate, even for 2016. Make no mistake, Quirk wanted a high-frequency metro, as he cites his proposal to have a 2-minute headway, meaning a train every 2 minutes, and heavily used media from the Paris Metro. Problem is, he also wants the cost-effectiveness of surface-level transit. Non-grade separated transit will be extremely difficult to achieve those stated 2-minute headways, likely near impossible. It just doesn't make any sense what he wanted. Of course, Quirk the Jerk won the 2016 election, and progressively over the consecutive months after the election, every hurdle and criticism he received against his pet metro project resulted in it ever so slightly being watered down. Now, when people questioned how he'll build all that infrastructure for just over $1 billion, he quickly realised this may be a pie-in-the-sky idea. So to appease the bean counters and play on the LNP's purported fiscal management image, he had to cut something, and that was the tunnel under the Cultural Centre bus station that was removed in favour of retaining the level crossings. Still, more cuts needed to be made, so out comes the track and ground electrification system in favour of battery. And finally, the metro was simply shrunk to the current feasible size of a bi-articulated bus, as there was no more guiding system. What's absolutely hilarious is that he basically plagiarized this idea from his predecessor, Campbell Newman. Now, there's nothing wrong about plagiarizing political ideas. This isn't academia, but it's probably best to double-check the homework, especially if it's from a guy whose notable achievements, apart from fumbling the biggest political lead ever in Queensland within 3 years, include the bus and train tunnel, colloquially known as the Bat Tunnel. It never got built, but it derailed the existing State Railways plans to build the now under construction Cross River Rail Tunnel, the aforementioned Clem 7 Tunnel, and its failed little brother, the Go-Between Bridge, which both have never hit half of the projected traffic volumes used to justify the projects, and thus needed to be written down and sold between toll companies. And finally, the piece de resistance, knocking down government administration buildings and amalgamating them into one large building. Okay, that doesn't sound so bad. Then selling the leftover prime real estate land to a developer to build a casino that, even before its full completion in early 2025, was, and at the time of writing this video, still is a whisker away from going broke and folding. Yeah, this guy is a modern day 4D chess playing political genius. Even after Quirk the Jerk quit politics and the new Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner took over, the LNP still refused to call it a bus. And I don't know why. There's nothing wrong with this bus. It's based on an existing platform from Hess in Switzerland who engineered it, just with batteries instead of catenary wires. So what's exactly the problem with the Brisbane Metro if other countries are already using them? Well, it's not the design at all. It's Brisbane's overall transport strategy that will fail these buses, not the other way around. Bi-articulated buses are a tried and proven technology that can shuffle thousands of people effectively and relatively cheaply, but how you use them will ultimately determine their efficacy. Remember that these buses were brought to alleviate the bus traffic and improve the general quality of public transport in Brisbane to hopefully reduce the horrific congestion over the ever-expanding city? Well, unfortunately, Brisbane suffers from having an incoherent transport policy. The city officials are still stuck in the mindset that people get on the bus near their home, then ride it into the workplace in the inner city, and thus they created a simple radial transport network. Not only that, but people demand to never have to change buses, resulting in nearly all buses driving the whole way from the city limits into the CBD. Just looking at the Victoria Bridge alone, where the Metro drives through, there are up to 30 bus routes, including the 2 new Metro lines that will cross the bridge. Some of these routes will be every 10 minutes, but also routes are coming in from nearly 25 kilometers away from the city every 10 minutes. This means about 80 buses per hour will need to cross this bridge. Of course, this has resulted in the bus traffic jams in the centre of the city, and what's worse about it is that the buses in that jam are predominantly empty. A 2012 review into Brisbane's bus network has shown that an alarming amount of the buses congesting the Victoria Bridge are predominantly empty. The busway can handle the amount of buses driving up and down it, but unfortunately the intersections that cross with general traffic can't, and even the platforms themselves. As part of the Metro proposal, they have removed public traffic on the Victoria Bridge to add an extra bike and bus lane to turn off into a new bus tunnel. This may or may not work, and the proof will be in the pudding when it opens in late 2025. But the other jam that I unfortunately can't find a photo of is actually the tunnel going under the convention centre and turns into the cultural centre bus stop. Whilst they have removed general traffic along this section of Melbourne Street and added a third platform as part of the cultural centre interchange, the Grey Street interchange will still remain as a bottleneck for the buses exiting the tunnel, and the buses continuing along the Melbourne Street. The original proposal of the Metro by Quirk had a new tunnel linking the cultural centre with the existing tunnel by bypassing the troublesome intersection. However, it got bonked over the head for cost and land resumption reasons. In order to reduce the bus traffic jams and maintain the network capacity, they supposedly designed the Metro to serve as a high-capacity trunk and feeder system. To quickly explain a trunk and feeder system, imagine a tree. The trunk is strong and carries the most weight, while smaller branches extend outward to reach more areas. Public transport works in a similar way. Trunk routes. These are the backbone of the system, fast, high-capacity services that run along main corridors. Think of metros, BRTs, or regional trains connecting key areas like city centres, business hubs, and major transit stations. And the feeder routes. These are the smaller local services that bring people from neighbourhoods, suburbs, or less busy areas to trunk route stations. These are typically buses, minibuses, or even on-demand shuttle buses. So how does it work? Let's take an example. Imagine you live in a quiet suburb outside a big city. You take a local bus, a feeder service, from your neighbourhood to the nearest train or metro station. You board a high-speed train or metro, the trunk service, that takes you directly to the city centre. Once at your destination, you might take a short walk, tram, or another local bus to your final stop. Now you might be wondering, why not just have direct buses everywhere? Here's why the trunk and feeder system works better. A single large vehicle such as a train, metro, or even the Brisbane Metro with high passenger capacity can move people faster and more efficiently than numerous smaller units like singular buses. But those smaller capacity transports like buses are best utilised when they only connect low demand areas to the high capacity, high frequency trunk routes, instead of redundantly competing with the higher capacity trunk systems. So instead of a small feeder bus spending 20 minutes collecting passengers, then another 20 minutes on the trunk route, the smaller bus can redivert its time and energy into only serving those low demand areas, which would increase the frequency. Frequency is king when it comes to public transport service, and even with the transfer, you're often faster with a 15-minute service and transferring to the trunk service than waiting 30 minutes for the next direct bus. Terminating suburban bus routes at the trunks allow them to redirect their time and energy in serving the local area instead of wasting time replicating what the Metro does better. This system allows a higher frequency or less resources spent on serving low demand areas, whilst reducing the amount of empty buses taking up space on the transitways. Unfortunately, the council retained a lot of direct to city routes, and now Brisbane has both a trunk and feeder system and a direct service system, with buses coming from everywhere, doing 1/3 of their route serving local areas and the remaining 2/3 being done on the same metro line. So I'm very skeptical that the Metro will achieve the goals and solve the problems that a trunk and feeder system is supposed to address. This strategy of running direct buses into the city, if you can even call it a strategy, is highly resource intensive. Buses often start out full, but quickly lose most of their passengers at key stops like rail stations, schools, or shopping centres, leaving them to complete the rest of the journey practically empty. So how do other countries implement their BRT bus systems? Well, let's jump to the other side of the world and take a quick look at Zurich, Switzerland, the land of chocolate, cheese, and precision public transport. Here we find what is essentially the Brisbane Metro's platform, but in trolleybus form, except these buses come with onboard batteries, allowing them to briefly leave the catenary lines that charge them along the main routes. This reduces the charging time at the terminus stations that the Brisbane Metro needs to do. After we're done admiring this engineering flex, we have to acknowledge that the Swiss too play the self-identification game, calling this a light tram by the manufacturer Hess. Now let's take a step back and see how Zurich actually integrates these vehicles into its broader transport network. Much like Brisbane, Zurich only operates bi-articulated buses on two lines. Line 31, an east-west route through the city replacing Zurich's first ever tram line, and Line 32, a north-south route serving key urban corridors. Even with their size, these buses struggle to keep up with demand during peak hours. However, there are numerous other capacity lines with articulated buses that crisscross the city. But what you won't see in Zurich are bus routes that redundantly follow the exact same routes for extended periods of time. At most you will see some trams and buses run alongside each other for limited distances, but don't come at frequencies like Brisbane busways of every 30 seconds, as the trams and bi-articulated buses provide the necessary carrying capacity. Every bus, tram and train line is designed to complement, not compete. They don't all funnel into the same destination. Instead, they form a dense, interconnected network, making it easy to travel in any direction without extended waiting or transfer periods or having to check schedules. And unlike Brisbane's model, you won't find long-haul bus routes stretching from the outer suburbs directly into the city centre. Instead, buses act as feeders, seamlessly connecting to high-capacity transit options. This bus route from outside of Zurich is 20 kilometers long and serves rural communities, but also integrates with train and tram stations and terminates outside of Zurich Central. The heavy lifting of transporting people from further out is predominantly done by trains that service smaller villages. This is what Brisbane needs to do. I mean, look at this bus route coming from nearly 25 kilometers away, with the majority of this route being the busway already served by other lines in the Metro. Brisbane needs to create a proper trunk and feeder system, where buses from far out terminate at rail or other high-frequency routes, to effectively shuffle people into the city without causing a traffic jam of its own, and maintaining high frequencies on the feeder routes. But honestly, had they done this 10 years ago, there wouldn't have been a reason for this vanity project. Or they could have just implemented the system for $500 million less and with much less marketing fanfare. But unfortunately, the strategy of Brisbane's transit is unlikely to change when you have those in power saying things like this.
Metro is about revolutionising the bus product. We want to make sure that our buses are really competitive with rail.
He called it a bus. But also, the councillor mentioned that they can now compete with the state government's railway network. This is integrated transit 101. You are not supposed to compete with each other. You are supposed to complement each other. But this is Australian politics. Each level of government blames each other, so the responsibility gets lost in translation. Anyway, the Brisbane Metro is an okay idea that has been implemented poorly in the grand scheme of things. It's like someone buying a gaming laptop just to surf the web, or getting Messi to play as a sweeper, a redundant position in the modern game of football, just for the team to park the bus. Or like getting a failed real estate casino tycoon to be president of the United States. For now, we can only hope that the Brisbane Metro is so successful, proving that it's so necessary to build high-capacity, high-frequency infrastructure that the council will see the benefit in maybe upgrading it to a tram? I don't know. A man can dream.